My name's Gwenno. I'm from Cardiff, Wales, and I'm an artist and a musician, and I sing in Welsh, Cornish and English, so I'm a trilingual artist, sort of exploring the fluidity of language and identity across Britain, mainly. My background has definitely informed what I do. I was raised in a Welsh and Cornish-speaking household. And so when I started making my solo albums, that's exactly where I went back to. And it's informed everything I do because it's the perspective that you have, I think, your childhood in particular. And sort of Celtic culture in general. So, I mean, that sort of extends to Ireland as well because I was a professional Irish dancer for a little bit in my teens. So I've had a sort of taste of quite a few of the Celtic cultures that I just think are really a lovely part of Britain, and it's sort of it just enriches the tapestry of everything that's going on culturally here. This one's called Tir Amor. It's a Cornish song. It's about an artist called Peter Lanyon from St Ives, and it's about his flight across the landscape of Cornwall. Tir Amor was the first song that I wrote in Cornish. I wanted to make a Cornish language record, and I did with Le Corv, which is The Place of Memories, my second album. And it's an album that explores 1,500 years of Cornish history. It goes, I mean, I'm sort of covering quite a lot of stuff there. And Tir Amor was inspired by a abstract landscape artist called Peter Lanyon, who was from St Ives and would glide over the landscape to get a better view. And he unfortunately crashed and passed away from that crash. But there was something really inspiring to me about Peter Lanyon's work, which was incredibly abstract but very, very Cornish. And for me, when it comes to cultural identity and how that's expressed, there's a really progressive way of doing that doesn't feel like it's being preserved or it's exclusive. It's about imagined futures, which I think artists can do. And for me, there's no one that epitomises the progressive element of Cornish culture than Peter Lanyon. And so Tir Amor means land and sea. And it's about his gliding flight. And it was just a very inspiring artist for me. And it sort of triggered me writing in Cornish. Anything else, they love music and culture. So
you kind of see that in the roster of their artists.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's just a love of people doing stuff and also like taking risks with artists. Jeff's got a great attitude in that sense because he's really confident and knowledgeable. You can come with what seems like a bonkers idea and he's like, yeah, great. Yeah, and that's what you need as an artist. You just need that encouragement.
You just want to run with your ideas, right?
Gosh, yeah. And like people going, well, I've no idea how that's going to pan out, but go for it, because that's what ideas are for.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think my approach in the 3 different languages that I have are very different. I think my theory is that each language has its own soul. I feel like a language is a living thing, and the experience that all the people that have had in using it over centuries informs the character that it has. So I always sort of see them as like, it's not, I wouldn't say human beings because it's made of human memory, but I always find that each language has its own identity and it's a different part of me, because people always say like, I feel different in different languages that I use. And I think so much of that is to do with the relationships that you have in those languages, not just that you feel differently. I find it really fascinating. And I think using all the language that I have, that I'm fluent in, for me, it's a constant conversation between the 3 languages because that's my experience in my life that has been, Welsh has had to fight to exist against the English language. the Cornish language has been sort of demolished by the English language, but also they've all informed each other. So there's this constant conversation between them as languages and power and all of that stuff. I'm just fascinated. It's endless, really, what those three languages have. And I mean, for me, that's just my perspective. Other people have other languages that are talking to a dominant language or a minoritized language. And I find those conversations between languages and the languages that people have, like, for example, the 500 community languages that are spoken in London, there's like this amazing dynamic between those and the English language, which is the dominant force. So that's my interest. Clap.
Eyes bright, sunbeams on the wire. I knew a dealer, he's still on my mind. Hotels tumbling down makes me miss the view. The sun's no substitute for the grey sky.
Yeah, I think what happened, I'd made 3 albums in Welsh and Cornish, and they were exploring my childhood mainly and things that I'd been given, which I really treasured. And then I was thinking about other things that had happened and other experiences that I'd had. And it was sort of bugging me a little bit because I was like, I've used English a lot in my life. I've had very emotional experiences in the English language. So I can't be like, well, it doesn't exist for me, because it does exist for me. And I wanted to be a bit democratic about it in my own sort of work. And then I started thinking about, well, for me, language is memory. It's collective memory. It's also your own personal memory. So I just went and I sort of wrote my first song in English for about a decade. And I sort of started writing about places, because I thought, well, how can I relate back to the English language and not be too generic about it, and think, well, what's my own experience in it? And I think about cities, there'd been a lot of conversations around rural landscape, and like there's a lot of too many conversations in my mind about language and landscape. And I think that we as human beings create incredible spaces in cities that are not permanent. And I thought about the impermanence of my own life, my own existence in cities. London, for example, you could have been here for 100 years and then you're gone, and then it was like you were never here. It's so constantly in motion. And there was something about the first quarter of the 21st century that I wanted to capture. And I'd lived in Las Vegas as a teenager as well, and there is no city that, changes as much as Las Vegas. It's so impermanent as a space and the way people use it. So I was just thinking more about what human beings made, in contrast to perhaps landscapes that don't change in rural areas. So it was just as a reaction. Everything I do is a reaction to the last thing I've done. And that's how I try and keep it interesting for me. I don't know if it's for anyone else. For me.
And what does a child need? 2 or 3 oak trees. Your hands carved stone, built churches, cleaned floors and washed the dishes.
I'm touring in May, and I'm touring the southeast of England proper for the first time. So I'll be like in Norwich, Cambridge, Ramsgate, London. We're playing Cecil Sharp House. So yeah, that'll be nice, and touring a bit and just writing and keeping things in motion and taking it all in. Yeah, I've had 2 children, and I'm sort of getting out of the mist of what that is, like physically and mentally and emotionally. And I think that's a really interesting space to be in as a woman that's a mother. So I'm sort of feel like I'm back in the room again, because there's something very dreamlike about Utopia, and it's to do with the fact that I wrote that when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I think I was being very reflective and trying to imagine another space. But a part of me feels that I'm interested in spaces and physical spaces. I feel like now's the time to be back in the room with other people. So that's the vibe. I don't know how it'll turn out, but that's the intention.
Mae'r heg yn gwyn so fi a